Welcome back to another episode of the Q&R Code podcasts with your twin podcasts. Well, we do have a lot of podcasts out, you guys. We are actually almost to 100 episodes, which is mind-blowing. Anywho, I'm Quinn, and my twin on the other side is Riley. And happy Tuesday.
Yeah, happy Tuesday. I don't like to bring our troubles with the podcast to you guys because we want it to just be a positive place. But I do just want to say, yes, last week we had a bit of an audio issue with my track. This week we have a bit of a video issue with Quinn's, not quite as high quality as you might be used to. And listen, we are a homegrown, homemade podcast, and we are trying our very best, but sometimes, actually,
you spend
unfortunately,
an hour and a half with IT trying to make your podcast work, and it still doesn't.
Yes, unfortunately, even when you're chatting and explaining your issue the same thing 5 times over, then they might just leave you with saying, looks like we'll have to look further into this, and we need to get an episode for you guys. We want to get an episode for you guys. If you happen to be a podcaster that frequently does long distance guests or something of the sort, and you're like, oh, I have a setup that works for me perfectly 100% of the time, we're very interested in knowing this, because is the part I least enjoy about this is when we can't just sit down and record as we intend to. But in any case, I think that you are a very generous audience that won't hold it against us. We just so much prefer having high quality video and audio, yet something unbeknownst to us sometimes gets in the way. And that is unjust and uncool. And yet another reason Quinn and I can't wait to live closer to each other, because we could just really, I'm sure, this whole situation if we were in closer proximity. The distance makes it a little more complicated.
Who knows? I'm sure that we'll be crying over our setup when we're in person. But anyhow, being an IT person sounds like the worst job ever to me, and I love to not solve my own technological problems, and I love when someone else actually successfully solves my technological problems. And when it doesn't happen successfully, I just can't imagine sitting in front of a computer all day and trying to troubleshoot that type of thing. It's not for me. But on a much brighter note, you are now tuning into two 26-year-old women, which to me means we have not yet exited our mid-20s. I feel very much that we're still mid-20s. Clearly can no longer say early 20s, and fair enough. But we celebrated an excellent birthday back in our home of Jackson that we told you guys about. And we're just going to kind of deep dive what we did there, tell you Jackson whole things, and talk about what our last week was like, getting to spend it together and have our twinship in the same space. So starting out, obviously Riley and Roger and Braden arrived to my little homestead outside of Denver, and we got to do introductions with Bunny and Roger, which Riley and I crossed our fingers would go excellent. And yes, there were very minor hiccups to begin with, but very quickly they became fast friends, and good thing, because they had no option. But that was sweet and fun getting to see the dynamic between all 3 dogs, because Pinkerton and Roger are obviously very close cousins already. Pinkerton being my 4-year-old dog, and Roger, Riley's only dog, that's about 3. And then Bunny being the puppy. It was just very interesting. And as you guys know, Riley and I are so interested in dogs and just animal dynamics in general. And it was so sweet and fun, and also kind of makes you feel like sometimes there's a kid being left out like you think of on the playground at recess where someone's just kind of standing in the corner watching the other kids play, and it's hard as adults not to feel like a little bit badly. But I think Roger particularly was very brave because he had to do some standing on the sidelines, really waiting his turn to play with Pinkerton. She's a changed dog now that she's a mama to a puppy. She has more responsibility. She knows that Bunny is her first priority, so sometimes Roger was taking a little bit of a backseat.
Yeah, he was very brave about that, and I think that it was a good learning experience for everyone, but he felt like, what the heck? Usually it's just me and Pinkerton going wild together, and he sometimes was starting to bark at her to try to get her attention, like, hey, come over here to play, but she was not falling for it. She was just focusing a lot on the puppy.
But Bunny
And
was
yeah,
like, I'll play with you, Roger. I
I
will
know,
play.
Bunny was running over and being like, okay, but Roger's like, I want Pinkerton. They very quickly started playing a little bit with each other, but you could just tell that Raj was a little tentative at first because Bunny's favorite version of play is clamp his shark teeth on the neck as hard as possible and unrelenting, do not let go. And Pinkerton is very tolerant of this. Roger was feeling a little skeptical about that, but warmed up for sure. And they did
And
really
Bunny and
great.
him play different. It's funny to watch because Bunny and him play differently than Bunny and Pinkerton. And then when we did our road trip to Jackson, where Riley, Braden, myself, and our puppy Bunny all road trip to Jackson, our family dog, Fletcher, who's now an older guy, like 10 and a half years old, and he is just not as spry as he used to be, was not wanting pretty much any play whatsoever with Bunny. So it was just great training and learning. I really feel like we took Bunny on an intensive puppy boot camp for the week of us being there because it was just new experience after new experience and so much new stimulation and new people, new dogs, just being around way more dogs than he usually is, obviously, with us on our property that other dogs are not wandering onto. And I'm so proud, and I was just excited to update you guys about the puppy training stuff because it has occupied my whole world. I mean, animal training in general has for many years at this point, but we have been so deep in the puppy training for the past month and a half since adopting Bunny, and I just think it's a very interesting thing and conversation because Jackson has such a different dog culture than what I have become more used to here in Denver, where, and I'm sure even like different parts of the city, it's probably different, and where I live outside of it, I'm sure it's different than how people are with their city dogs. But in Jackson, it's just like a dog free for all of so many people. Their dogs are just off leash, they're running up to each other, they're running away from their owner, they don't come back on a recall, so it definitely put me in a position that I felt like having to be on high alert at all times because I won't bore you guys with exactly what our training regimen looks like, but I'm not comfortable with doing on leash greetings, especially in this period of trying to socialize and train Bunny. And what a lot of people don't realize about dog socialization is that it's not going up to and meeting a bunch of dogs. It's not like calling what humans do as socialization. It is being able to be within the stimulus of dogs or humans or anything else and being able to regulate their nervous systems around it and being able to be calm and listen to you. So it was a deep dive, and I was very grateful to have my team of Riley and Braden and my mom and everything, and just all of the people that were on my team because it was biting off a lot. And it was very interesting to see how different people reacted to the boundaries that I set. I know, and Riley, thanks for letting me go on such a tangent, and then I'll obviously have you respond, but just to get all of the puppy thoughts off of my chest, like, I think it's very interesting in general, like we've talked about, how uncomfortable I think people are in our society with boundaries. And of course, our generation is bringing up boundaries more often. But I think, particularly around dogs and pets, that I don't feel like most people are very used to or comfortable with people setting boundaries with their animals. For instance, before you walk in the door, if you're coming to someone's house because they're having a little summer barbecue party or whatever, I don't think most people are used to hearing, hey, please don't get excited to see my dog. Please avoid petting them to begin with. We're not doing direct like interactions, and if you could just basically ignore them, that will help me acclimate them to this situation. So I know that some people, I feel very grateful because I know that most people were really on board, and I actually feel very validated by most people about the training efforts. But I found that some people disagreed with and were uncomfortable with the fact that I have boundaries around my puppy and how greetings look, because I don't want him to become, as much as I can handle with my training plan, I don't want him to become reactive and aggressive. And a lot of people don't understand dog body language and when enough is enough, and it can turn into an instance where, even though he's a puppy and right now people think, oh, if he just growled or lunged at me or snapped at me, it's not really a big deal because he's not going to do any damage. That is setting the tone for the type of dog that he's going to be long term. And I'm even more tight about it right now since he's an extra large dog breed and is going to be huge, and I want him to be safe around people and other dogs.
Also, I think that what people sometimes fail to recognize is that to have a really well, quote unquote, well trained dog, it requires other people's cooperations. And I do notice that a lot of people complain about the level of training other people's dogs have, but then don't really listen when you're trying to train your dog and you're asking for something specific. I don't know what podcast she was on, but I just saw just a short reel clip of Alona Mar, the rugby player, on someone's podcast the other day saying, like, people need to train their dogs better. I don't want to be jumped on by dogs, etc. And I was just thinking about how I totally understand that feeling. And on the side of being a dog owner, I have seen and been a part of so many times where you say, oh, please, like, don't let them jump on you, don't, like, pet them if they do that, and people say, oh my gosh, it's fine, it's okay, and they're petting them and whatnot. And so even when you're trying to assert those boundaries, they can be ignored. And I think, like you said, a lot of people on this trip did such a great job and were actually so helpful with the training of Bunny, whether they were like strangers or family and friends alike, and that was really great to see. I also just know that a lot of people do have some judgments attached to it when you ask them specifically how to act around your animal, but of course I'm coming from a particular perspective that I have learned so much through Roger, where I'm like, it's a matter of safety, and so I have become very strong in my convictions with that. It was a completely different story than how we were raised in culture around dogs. Like you said, in Jackson, it truly is a dog free-for-all, and I'm not saying that to be super critical, because I think there are some pros. There are a lot of dogs that don't have a problem socializing with other dogs, and they love to run free and they get to go explore and sniff, and there's that side of it, and I think that it's coming from a well-intentioned place. Also, I have become a lot more attuned to dog behavior because I've had to, and I have definitely realized that we're comfortable with putting our dogs in really stressful situations a lot of the times that they are not enjoying and that they're not appreciating, and a lot of people are just banking on the fact that they think they have a dog that won't bite, or oh, he's not aggressive, he would never. I hear just people say that all the time about their dog, and it's like, okay, but you're like putting these two or more animals into the situation of a pressure cooker and just hoping that something doesn't snap. And think about that with people too. There are plenty of people that have never been violent that then are in an extremely stressful situation and they resort to violence. You and I, I'm like, we can't even begin talking about dog training without me going down the pipeline. But Quinn's probably tired of me trying to frame things in like this Zen way. But I've just been reading more about like Zen and mindfulness, and I'm trying to remind myself and will remind you guys that when you see a situation, there's your perspective, there's another person's perspective, and that's all part of the whole picture. So I know that I can feel very attached to my perspective about dog training, because when people don't understand, I'm like, this is really compromising me and my dog's ability to succeed, and I need you to cooperate in order for us to potentially like have some healing get out on the other side, where it's not like so strict what I'm gonna ask of you. But as of right now, like, if you're not going to listen super strictly to what we're asking, then Roger just will not be able to be successful, and you can be confused about that all you want, because with your dog, that's not the situation. But I definitely felt very healed in some ways getting to do this with Bunny, just knowing now, like, what I didn't know then when Roger was a younger dog, and I, from the jump, was, like, really trying to set him up for success with boundaries and whatnot, but just didn't have the tools, knowledge, or information that I have now. And I think that it's so awesome that you get to have this experience, that we all get to have this experience with him starting fresh, and feeling very assured that even if other people are like, that's differently than I would do it, it's like, okay, well, that's okay, but I've seen the way that you would do it turn out unfavorably, to say the least.
Yeah, I know you weren't saying you talking about me, though it could sound like that.
No, you, the general, you honestly talking about me, even though, again, I was really conscientious with Roger, but how could I have known, being a first-time dog owner and coming from that environment?
You had a lot more regimented boundaries with Roger than what you grew up with, and you did know more about dog training going into adopting Roger than you did growing up. So, like, you had already made progress. It's just not the amount of information that we have now, and you took it upon yourself to deep dive and educate yourself. So it's like, that's water under the bridge. It doesn't matter at this point, because you have the relationship you do with him now and the trust that you do, and you guys have gotten so far. But it's easy to make judgments on other people doing something that seems out of the norm, or especially coming from a woman. And yes, I will take it there, because I do feel that it's perceived differently as a woman to lay down boundaries with people about whatever it is. And I think that it takes people back, like, oh, you're not just going to say yes to this, or you're going to interfere with what I'm doing. Because, like I told you guys, there was the point where I wasn't letting people pet him because he didn't have his vaccines, and I was not willing to take the risk of my dog getting parvo or anything else. I don't need to deep dive it, but I've had to tell people and like put my hand in front of theirs saying, no, I'm sorry, we're not doing pets for this reason. Thank you for understanding. In fact, I've actually been pretty much not apologizing, because I'm not sorry. And I appreciate you wanting to pet a puppy. Who doesn't? I completely understand. It's not fun coming from my side to ever make someone feel shut down, which is why I try not to make them feel shut down, but try to do like little bits of educating, just saying, oh, I'm not doing this because thank you so much for understanding. I appreciate you helping me on my dog training right now. Some people and most people are, even though I see most people be surprised when they hear no from me or when I say, actually, we're not doing a greeting. Like most people, you can see on their face or whatever that they're a little surprised that I'm saying that. But then most people understand and are like, oh, that's great that you're doing that or whatever. And I'm grateful because there were a lot of strangers who came up and said, like, I can tell you're doing a really excellent job with your puppy. Way to go. I know it's a lot of work, and a good dog is a reflection of a good owner. Mostly, I was really pleasantly surprised by how well actually people were taking to it. But then, being in the situation of raising a puppy, it's so much literally just every day that pressure where, like Riley's saying, the analogy of a pressure cooker, it's just kind of constantly there's pressure because I'm working with him all of the time, nonstop.
Including
so,
all nighttime when somebody might have had a bit of a problem with an overactive bum.
yes, I'm literally being up through the night because he had the squirts and has had that
Okay.
issue.
I said it a little nicer.
And I said, I don't gaff. You guys can hear what I went through. Literally being a single mom because Sean stayed here holding down the fort, and I am waking up 6 times through the night to take my dog out to have the squirts. It was horrible. But anyway, and I have other things going on in life, obviously, and I'm an extremely busy person. So then when there were the moments that felt like unsupported or that I was asking for boundaries and people disregarded them, that is where I felt like, okay, my resilience for being super like steadfast in this, I stayed steadfast in my boundaries, but it felt really like more sensitive to have ever the negative feedback or the lack of understanding from people, because I'm like, you don't see what is going into the behind the scenes. And then everyone is like, oh my gosh, your puppy is amazing. Like, look how calm he is. He's just laying down here at the restaurant while there's all these dogs and food and you're eating. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen because my puppy came out of my womb and was a perfect boy. That happened because I have been tirelessly working on his training and putting tons of effort in behind the scenes that most people are never going to understand and see. I'm not saying poor me. I chose it. I'm happy to. I love animal training. That doesn't mean it's not frustrating for moments that you just feel so misunderstood because people aren't able to put themselves in your shoes for a minute. But overall, just I'm so proud of him, and I am so proud of myself, and I'm so proud of my team. I am proud of everyone who was able to hear me out and listen and potentially learn. It's not like I'm the teacher of all things dog training, but I think that I've put a substantial amount of my life into learning about animal training. So I do feel confident about it, and I do feel empowered to be sharing that in little bits and pieces that I never want to feel like I'm shoving down people's throats, but I think it can just be little bits of food for thought that so many people aren't, it's not in their sphere thinking about dog training, even so many dog owners. So I feel grateful for that. And what this process has showed me more than anything is just to continue to like know that in moments of other people's judgment or misunderstanding, I can put my head down and keep walking my path because the proof is in the pudding. It's very clear for me to see that my work is paying off, and it's okay to let go of the need for validation from others. Of course, it feels good, and I'm so grateful for, once again, what I'm calling my team, who was validating me a lot and really helping me. And I have become a lot more confident with every single time I have set a boundary, and it's not always a boundary of no. Sometimes, for example, someone came over and reached over to pet my puppy and said, "Can I pet your puppy?" And I said, "Actually, could you please just stand here with us for a moment before you go straight up to him?" Like, there are different ways of setting boundaries, And that is making me feel more confident and empowered in my life in general, being able to continue to work on that type of communication that isn't always super comfortable or fun, but
Hmm.
makes my life and whatever, my baby's life more successful.
And we'll move right on from talking about dogs, but I'll just plug for little Raji real quickly that he was staying with a trainer in Colorado while we went up because I wasn't going to be able to watch him all the time, especially with Bunny on our hands while we were there. And again, in Jackson, also having a reactive dog is literally my nightmare. Like, he and I would be able to figure it out, but like, talk about an obstacle course. So he was there.
Yeah.
He had stayed with them 6 months ago as well when we needed care. And the trainer, who is a really proficient, excellent trainer that Quinn and I have learned a lot from, that we've worked with in the past. I just respect and I do actually value her thoughts on how we're doing, said that we have done so great even in these past 6 months, that he was so much more confident and comfortable and relaxed, and was just really impressed with how far he'd come. So that was nice to hear.
Oh, nice. And he did do, you can tell, like, I think because you and of course Riley and I will have phone calls to each other sometimes being like, I am going to have a breakdown because of what just happened with my dog and I am at capacity. And these things can feel really heavy and frustrating when there is a setback, whether Roger has lunged toward a dog or whatever it may be. But because I get the distance between you guys, look, I can look at it positively. Because I get to have distance, then I see the progress so blatantly in my face with you guys that even with Roger having this new introduction with the puppy, the way he was able to come down from his arousal as quickly as he was. And also, shout out to Jennifer, who is the dog trainer we're referring to. Her Instagram and TikTok that has a lot of useful information is Top Paw Canine, just in case people are interested in diving a little deeper into their dog's training.
So that was awesome. And then just talking more about our trip to Jackson Hole, as they say. I know that a lot of people that listen to the podcast are from Jackson or Wyoming and have context for it, but for people maybe that don't, it gets really busy. I was gonna say in the summertime, but just in general, honestly, there's a lot of tourism, a lot of in and out. And a lot of the times when I talk to my family or locals back home, sometimes you kind of get this like negative spin on things of how much everything's changed. And so I intentionally going back was like just trying not to be in the mindset of feeling disturbed by change, because if we know anything is guaranteed, it is change. And believe me, I am all for like preserving old towns and keeping the Western charm and not just developing for developing's sake. So that is an intentional mode to put myself into, because I do feel sad about new structures going up, old ones being torn down. But I was just trying to go there with the vibe of nostalgia, since I haven't been home in the longest stretch ever, a year and a half. And so I wanted to have a positive week and not one where I was just feeling like, everything's different. And I think that that was basically how I felt. Of course, I noticed the changes. I especially noticed the 2 hours of traffic that I sat in when I had to go over the hill. That was absolutely crazy and ridiculous. But it really is just a special thing to love your hometown and to feel so connected to it. And I just feel right, like settled back into my skin and bones to be there. And the Early June. It just happens that our birthday is one of the most beautiful times in the valley where it's so lush and green from all the moisture and snow melt, and the wildflowers are coming out. The frost has just started to like die down at night, and it is a absolutely stunning, Gorgina, fabulous place to be and to be from. And like most local kids that have grown up, the hardest part I would say about going back is thinking, wow, it's so inaccessible to live here that the most of us, maybe not most of us, but I would say a lot of us kind of already feel and have had to arrive to some acceptance, like unless something crazy miracle like happened, this will not be the place that I settle and live, because affordability wise, how?
Mm-hmm.
Yet, aren't I lucky that I grew up here and have so many connections and a place to stay and visit, and will always have this a part of my life, even if I'm not like building a home here.
I know people ask me so often, well, oh, Jackson is a lovely place to have horses. Do you think about moving back there? I'm like, that would be lovely. That would be lovely to have horse property in Jackson. I
Yeah,
like that
you're like,
idea.
yes, I think about it. And
If
that's as far as it
you
goes.
if you on an artist's salary can recommend me a spot, awesome. But yeah, thinking and daydreaming, never say never. You know, Riley and I, who knows what fortune we could come into, but it seems a lot more likely that we will be somewhere else in the West and just be so lucky that our parents have been able to keep their home and have such a beautiful home. We love our childhood home, and my mom has such an immensely abundant garden that she is working so hard on. It's always been so beautiful, and my parents have always worked really hard on the landscape, but my mom has really dived deep into making the garden, both vegetable and flower, so abundant and beautiful. And another fun thing about Jackson that I felt very grateful for with Bunny is that there are a lot of places like restaurants that you can bring your dog to the patio. And what that means is that there are usually other dogs on the patio too, which, again, incredible training opportunities, also at times slightly less restful during your meals, but I'm so happy, honestly, that I was exposed in all those situations, because now I just feel that much more like, hey, this summer for me in Colorado, I can more so be taking the dogs out to a restaurant and go out on the patio. And I'm not at the place with Bunny yet where I feel comfortable like driving away from our house with him here, even though he's being crate trained. We're just not to that spot yet, but we're working toward it anyway. I'm really proud of my husband Sean too, because he just completed a super intense project. He's an aerospace engineer and really had to grind this one out. So, we just talked about going to a restaurant with a patio that will be fun with the dogs, and it might seem like people might be like, you're being like, whoa, I get to go to a restaurant. But when we first raised Pinkerton, Sean and I didn't go on a date for over a year. The only time we ever went on a date was either with our dog, which at that point, again, we had less resources to figure out how to make that happen. So we did do a couple like close enough restaurants that we could be on the patio, but we didn't just have us a solo date unless there was a babysitter, which would either be my mom or Riley being there. The hardships make you that much more excited about the little things. in life.
Speaking of date night, we got to have a twin date night that my twin so generously wanted to bring me for my birthday, and we did have grandma as the babysitter for little Bun Bun, and we had the most tasty, delicious sushi meal. I can't thank you enough for, because this is an exceptionally delicious restaurant. And this was a bit of an illicit icing on the cake.
I feel like right now we have to be, if we're telling people Jackson details, tell them where it is.
Okay, the restaurant is Kampai. It's really yummy sushi right off the town square in Jackson. It is bougie. Expect that. I feel badly because people have... It's sushi, but also people will be like, can you recommend me like affordable spots? I'm going through Jackson for like a camping trip. No, I'm sorry. No, I cannot, because it's not
That's
affordable.
Not the place to budget.
Herein lies the issue with living there, is that it's expensive, and even the places that used to be like, oh, these are more on the like cheaper end of dining options. Of course, there's more affordable and like more fine dining, but even the places that used to be considered like hole in the wall are just expensive. So,
yep.
Know that. But Quinn and I had this best little magical end to our evening that, well, I'll tell you what's funny about it in a moment when I get to that. But right parked outside of the restaurant where we ate was this cutest old yellow truck, a little, like, I would guess probably 90s Ford.
1971.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Quinn came with the facts.
Well, I only know because, to interrupt your story, when Riley and I were walking into Kampai to have our dinner, we were walking past someone that had a basket of flowers in her arms, and she said, I'm getting tattooed by you tomorrow. So Riley and I went, okay, well, great. We will ask her about the flowers. And then, yes. Okay, now you can continue.
So she has her cute little truck built up, so it has like a plank on the side with holes cut into it that can put buckets into. So the buckets were full of flowers, and then next to it was like a little wagon with all these rolled paper cones. And then there was a laminated like placard that said, please help yourself to a bunch.
Your way out.
Yeah, please take a bunch on your way out. And we were standing and looking around, and nobody was taking any, but we were like, it says to help yourself, and there's nobody here, nobody to ask. It's just right here. So we were not sure.
And there were no, there's no cones or anything like that in front of it. Like, Riley and I just thought,
there was nothing to indicate don't take these.
Yeah.
So it's not like we were being sly about it. We were just like, okay, this seems like, yeah, you take it. This is cool. Yeah. But it also said...
a little community thing.
Yeah, a little community thing. And it said like golden hour in Kyoto. And so we were like, oh, maybe since Kampai is like a Japanese restaurant, that this is like something that they do. And we were like, sweet. So we got to make ourselves this beautiful bouquet that had such like pretty colors, such nice flowers, and we were just on cloud 9 feeling like, wow, our birthday meal
magic
really ended with a special surprise. And then I'll let Quinn go from there when she talked to her client the next day.
Well, I was so excited because I've been tattooing so many florals, and there were peonies, and there were all sorts of different
cool
flowers
poppies.
That I honestly don't even know, but yeah, really beautiful poppies. The peonies and the poppies I was so excited about. But so Riley and I took a few, and it was just lovely. And then I saw my client the next day, and she started to talk to the owner of the shop where I was tattooing about the event she did last night. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wanted to ask you about that, because I have to come clean. I'm hoping that this is what was intended for it, but my twin and I did take a bundle of flowers like the sign said, and we just felt like if no one participates, that's no fun. And she said, yeah, it was for an event on their rooftop of Kampai after the fact, but that's totally fine that you did that. Like the flowers were already completely paid for because I said, I will pay you for these flowers. And she said, the flowers were already purchased. I'm, a brand new business starting up. So it was a learning experience for me to maybe not like have the sign right out and ready until the event is going on because she said, I think a lot of people had the same idea as you did. And before the event was finished, there were definitely quite a few flowers missing. But she said that she was very glad that people in Jackson like jumped on the opportunity and took the flowers and that it was still great marketing for her and exposure of people seeing the truck because she is doing this truck that you can like rent for events and stuff that she will stock with beautiful flowers and then people can take home with them. So she said
Which is
it was
such a
still,
good idea.
yeah, she said it was still completely a win. But that it was a learning experience, which I, as a business owner, think of that type of stuff all the time. There might be things that sometimes feel a little bit like, oops, that didn't go the way it's planned, but then you learn from it, and now she will know to make like signage more clear. But I thought it was absolutely lovely and such a fun idea. And I believe that the business is called Butter Blooms. So
We
anyone in
will,
Jackson can
maybe
check them
we'll
out.
post one of the photos that we took with it and tag or something because it was really cute. We did take some photos. We are obviously lovers of plants, but right now just on such a flower kick, you, me, and mom, that we're all like wanting to grow more flowers, like have a cutting garden and just make our own bouquets and things like that. So I think we were especially jazzed about that. And this week I'm taking a floral arranging class, a little workshop at a local shop that I really love and love the owner of that's doing it. So can't wait to tell you guys about that as well.
So
Like Quinn
fun.
said, my mom's garden right now is just crazy, especially considering it's in Jackson where a lot of people don't even really make an attempt to grow things because it can be a very challenging climate, or other people have professional gardeners that they pay to do it, and it is a big undertaking that she's doing this all herself. So I'm so proud of her and can't wait to see what she grows by the end of the summer.
Yeah, she's a rock star, and Riley and I were so spoiled that for our birthday, we got gifts, which I mean, we can, I guess, expect from our mom because she is just such a lover and spoiler of us, but we weren't expecting just because we were home to have a beautiful gift basket, but she gifted me and Riley these beautiful cast iron shears for or little snippers. Um, there's a fancy name. I don't know what it is, but the little clippers that are perfect for deadheading or trimming flowers or whatever in the garden. This bird book called The Backyard Bird Chronicles. I'm so excited about. We've also been very into bird watching. And then she gifted us a few
Yes.
different sizes of flower frogs that are they have like a bunch of pokey little wires coming out of a circle, and it's like all stainless steel that you paste into the bottom of a vase and then poke the stems into. So Riley is going to definitely learn more about that in her floral arranging class this week, but I'm so excited because we love plants and flowers and animals and that type of stuff that, especially in these tough times, like politically and with the climate of America, I just feel like it is so important. And I posted about it on Instagram a few days ago, but just remembering that joy is resistance. And just because unspeakably horrible things are happening, that doesn't mean that we need to spend all of our time in doom. And I know that that can be easier said than done, but because I am having this type of joy and excitement about something, I want to lean in and really embrace that and take all of the joy and curiosity and excitement I can get.
I love that. Also, on the note of the birds, I did finally download the Merlin app, which I will highly recommend because it's completely free and so cool and useful. It's a bird ID app, so you can either take a photo that you submit or do a recording of the birds. Like, you could just hold up your phone and as it's recording it will tell you what birds are making the song or the call. If you're somewhere without Wi-Fi, I'm also pretty sure you can like record and then upload a recording. You can definitely do that with a photo, but I have been loving to learn more about the birds in the area. In Jackson specifically, we always had a lot of birdhouses, a lot of bird feeders around in addition to the garden. So there are lots of different little songbirds and other birds that come through. And my mom is a good resource for those, but sometimes, you can hear one, but you're not sure who's making the sound. And I learned that one of my favorite bird sounds comes from the brown-headed cowbird, which is a common little bird. I just didn't know that they were the ones that it makes almost like a raindrop sound. Look up their song and you will know what I mean for it being. Oh, I saw someone online describe it as a robotic raindrop sound. I don't think it sounds robotic to me. It sounds like a whistly raindrop sound, but in any case, Brayden is like, you are crazy, because now I just want to like keep on adding birds to my list. And when we were at the gas station the other day, I took a picture of a pigeon. He was like, that is a pigeon. I'm like, I know, but I don't know if there's like a specific type of pigeon. And it is.
Pigeons
it
are
was
beautiful.
Pigeons are beautiful, and it is called, like, I think, a European collared pigeon. And I'm like, okay, see, didn't know that.
Yeah, I think pigeons are so cool and birds in general, but we had another great horned owl sighting, you guys, at my house. Riley was here for it, and we got to get very up close in as respectful of a way as possible. But we had Sean's binos that we were able to really zoom in and get clear, and it is so cool. If you don't have a pair of binoculars and are observing the world around you like that, I highly recommend it. And Riley, last night, we spotted her in the tree again and got to have another staring session through the binoculars.
Aw.
And she just stayed there for literally, I think an hour or more. And she's so beautiful. And we did confirm, in fact, that those owls are great horned owls. And okay,
Yeah.
a couple of
Also,
more
wait,
things.
real quick. Shout out
Yeah.
to Raj, because he's the one that pointed out the owl to us when we were hanging out
He
outside
is.
and got to look. And
He stuck out
second-
his little nose and eyeballs just pointed to it, and we were like, what are you looking at? And there she was.
Yes. And second, we were trying to get an iPhone picture like through the binoculars so you could see it well, because I took a photo just like on my iPhone, but it was far enough away that you couldn't really see it. So
Even though it seems close through our eyes, it seems so different when you're taking it on the phone.
it really does, and it wasn't good detail. And taking those photos through the binoculars is so hard and advanced. Quinn said Sean's done some good ones, but these are pretty rudimentary. However, if there's interest, I can still post that. But
He did it again last night, and they're good. I'm like, how are you managing this? I don't know.
I don't know. He needs to give us a lesson, but using binoculars makes me want to use them all the time, and no wonder Sean loves to walk around with his little chest harness on that he can just reach with those in, because I'm like, I actually need these for my day-to-day life. Thank you.
Talk about for birding, like that is so helpful. And we, as you guys know, get a beautiful herd of elk, and Sean doesn't want to be caught slipping and not have his binos when there's a beautiful thing to experience with wildlife. But I want to do a couple more touches on a few special birthday / Jackson things. First of all, I feel on a cloud and so lucky with the family we have, and now the blended family we have with Riley's in-laws, the Estes, which are just awesome people. And we always have so much fun with them, and they do such a great job always bringing so much food to our house and stuff when we're doing barbecues, which is what we did for our birthday. We just did a very mellow and chill um, little barbecue, and my mom for dessert made us homemade strawberry shortcake. So she made the biscuits and made fresh whipped cream and strawberries, and I just think that is about as good as a dessert gets. I was so happy with that, especially for the summer. Light, delicious, but still not so light that you're like, did I even eat anything? They're so good, and I personally think that's a very fun and more accessible option if you're getting into baking, that the only baked component is the biscuits, and the rest you can just whip up some heavy whipping cream and cut fresh strawberries, and that is such a cute fun thing to bring to a little get together or to make for yourself. Riley, do you want to add on before I talk about our first luxury experience that I gifted you?
No, I endorse any time that there are berries and cream, but that says it all.
Well, then to round out our birthday trip, the day after we got back to Denver, Riley and I had our first experience at a Korean inspired head spa. And wow, wow, wow. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I feel like now it's kind of been a more talked about on social media the past year. I know that I first saw it, I think, I don't know, 6 months or a year ago, people talking about like is it Korean or Japanese head spa? Maybe it's Japanese.
I thought Japanese.
Yeah. Maybe I just still have my mind on Korean barbecue. um but anyway, so yeah, I think they're Japanese inspired, like head spas, but I just felt inspired to gift Riley and I some sort of a relaxing, rejuvenating experience. And I was going to do a massage, which is lovely, and I would never turn that down. But I decided to do something a little different and creative. So we were brand new to what this would have to offer for us, because I knew like they do a deep wash of your hair, they massage your scalp. That's kind of the extent, like it's calming in there, it's relaxing, it's quiet. That's kind of all I knew about it. And then going in, they really just immersed us in the experience. First of all, we were given our little silk robes and gowns that we put on. Then we were wafted the smells of our different scents of aromatherapy that we got to choose. So there were like 6 options, and we got to choose on our aromatherapy. Then they take us into the room, and Riley and I did the guest experience. So we're next to each other the whole time, which is exactly how we wanted it. And we were the only
We're
people
like,
in
do you
there.
have any double wide beds so we can be holding hands?
Yeah. But so they help you lay down, put your head on the little rest, and then get your hair. No. How did I forget this? First, after our aromatherapy experience, they sit you down in just like salon style seating in front of a mirror, and they brush your hair, look deeply at your scalp, and in fact they look so deeply at your scalp that they use a little frickin' camera that they press around.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a part that some people really like, some people really don't. It's not, to me, that pleasant, because you have the screen right in front of you of what the camera sees as they're looking so microscopically close into your scalp, and I'm like, okay, that's none of my business.
Being a girly with scalp psoriasis as of the last few years, no, it was not my favorite thing to see the condition of my scalp, because I also know I am in a period of a flare-up due to stress. And so I was like, oh God, to look at my scalp. But I also felt like, hey, at least I know what's going on and I have some education.
Quinn's like, confirmed. I have scalp psoriasis for sure.
Confirmed, inflamed, not happy scalp, but thankfully not all over my entire head. But Riley and I did both receive the feedback that we have extremely healthy hair and hair follicles, so we're happy to be validated in that. And then they take us back and the head spa experience begins, and they're doing massage, they're doing tools against your forehead and then into your scalp. They're doing the wire little claw thing that goes up and down your head that feels like fucking magic.
They're doing this like halo of water beams that then goes whoosh, like up and around your head, and it's so delightful, delicious.
Lovely. So a couple of deep cleanses, and they're really like they're doing the more flat palming finger things, and then they do the more scratching finger things, and they pick up your head and turn it to the side, and then focus on one side, pick your head up, turn it to the other side, focus on one side. It was great. And then they do a treatment of your scalp and your hair, and then they rinse it all out, and there's more flourishes in there. They then took us with a tray of fresh fruit and water and a little biscuit cookie to sit down and get our hair blow dried, and that really rounded out the experience. Just what the doctor ordered.
The whole thing was so nice. It felt so relaxing, just like and my hair feels still so soft, shiny, all of that. They re-look at your scalp with the camera and it looks primo. But the whole thing was such a delight, and I had never heard of it until Quinn brought it up to me. Now I'm so glad that we did it, and funnily enough, I just got an email today about a local place in Charlottesville that I've got my hair cut, and they're now offering a head spa treatment, which I was like, yes, I want to do that again. However, I'm kind of afraid to do it somewhere else because Judy, my gal, really killed it, and I'm like, what if I'm disappointed? Because it's not a cheap situation to do, but it's so worth it for a luxurious, relaxing thing. So realistically, I probably will not get to do this for another long while, but if you have the opportunity to, I definitely recommend it. It was such an excellent gift, and I just felt so comfy and relaxed. And when you're like, oh, it feels so good when someone washes your hair at the salon, imagine that, but like glamorized 10 times longer, and also like much more like focused. A much more immersive experience. Yes. It was fully like relaxing spa music, the
no one
aromatherapy. Yeah,
everything good.
It was so awesome.
Being with your twin alone. Yeah.
So, long story short, we did have a great birthday week. Thank you guys for asking. Yes, you should go to Jackson for a trip if you can swing it. Wyoming tourism, we are very, very interested in you sponsoring this podcast because we already do that work weekly for you anyway.
We are very interested. And I just recently have been told by a few people that they are weekly listeners and love our podcast. And you guys, anytime that is told to us, that just means so much, because we know that we're small right now, and that is not to take away from the impact we may have to an individual, but we know our operation is small, but we're feeling more and more mighty all the time, and it just feels really great and like such a privilege to be able to connect with you guys. And Riley and I tried to be vulnerable and honest and also have fun, but also talk about the more hard things, and it just feels so worth our time and effort on this journey when people let us know that it's resonating with them. So thank you to those of you who have mentioned that to us, and happy flipping summer. Seriously, now summer is in full swing. Let's just focus on the present and doing everything you can to live your truth and live in the moment and enjoy this season of life and be active in sharing your beliefs. And, I want to shout out the protests, the No King protests that happened this past Saturday. I think that that is incredible that it happened in all 50 states and that people showed up, used their voices, used their time and resources to make a statement about human rights and living under a fair government. So I'm proud of all of you who made that happen, and I'm really proud of the community that we're cultivating. So thank you all. And Riley, my sister, I love you so much.
Love you so much too, Quinn. Amen and adios.
Goodbye.